Hello and welcome to B&E Now, a podcast about independent game development. I'm your host, Tobiah Marks, and with me today is my old friend, Nick Lindberg.
Hello.
So Nick and I go way back to college. We both went to Cogswell College. We're presidents of the Game Development Club.
Yeah, I met you in 2008. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when you started school,
Yeah,
right?
I started.
I graduated.
You graduated pretty much that.
I graduated 2009. So yeah, we had like 1 year overlap. We were both simultaneous students, and then you kind of took the mantle after I left.
Yeah, you left, I think, in the summer of 2009, and I was vice president. Brody, another friend of ours, was president.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like kind of like right behind everyone. Because you were what, seventh president?
I was the 7th president of that club.
Yeah.
And you were the 10th president of that club.
And when I say I'm the 10th president of the club, people automatically have to correlate that with Doctor Who. And it's a bit annoying.
Oh, yeah. Because who was that? Is that Tennant?
That was David Tennant,
yeah. But he's the best doctor.
Everyone says he's the best doctor, but I didn't get into Doctor Who because of David Tennant. So
Fair enough.
Matt Smith is technically my first.
Let's rewind a bit because I got to start with the same question every show.
Fair enough.
Why do you make games?
Well, games always appealed to me. I grew up playing games. I can't really recall why I wanted to make them in the first place. I think like everyone, I thought, oh hey, this is a cool way to tell a story. You know, I can make a story with it, and that's not. As learning how to make games, it's not what makes a game.
A lot of people get into that like cinematic like experience, like the reasons why they say I like games are similar reasons why filmmakers say they make movies, but games were just their medium, what they played. Is it that simple? Or is there something different about games that was more appealing than movies?
Well, I think really the game that had a huge influence in me because it was totally different from anything I played. Because like growing up with like the NES and the Super NES and all that, and seeing some 3D games kind of get in there, it was interesting. But the game that kind of made me like go, wow, this is totally different was Command and Conquer. My cousin was playing it. He was playing the Command and Conquer Red Alert, not on a PC but on a PlayStation, so a little bit weird. But
there was a PlayStation version?
There was a PlayStation version of the Command and Conquer games.
I never played a console RTS.
Well, that's what I grew up on. But then I got the PC versions. I'm like, oh, this is so much better.
Yeah, it's
but I thought
keyboard and mouse.
Yeah, I saw this whole thing of like I can command people and tell them what to do and how this sort, and it blew my mind. And then like, hey, what if it did this and what if that, and I'm still thinking about that. I'm still thinking about this RTS I want to make, but it's like it's changed 1,001 times over like I'm 28 now and I was 11 or 12 when I first saw that game. So yeah, it's changed 1,000 times.
Were RTS that really got you into gaming, or like what was the first game that you really got into?
I like Mario because I'm right in that area. Like I had a Mario,
the original NES.
The original NES. I have the original NES and still my Game Boy Brick, the original Game Boy.
Nice.
And I have not owned a Nintendo product since.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I have like two of the most heralded best Nintendo products.
Yeah, and I still have them. I even have like the big joysticks with like.
I have so many Game Boys. It's hard to admit for me to how. I guess I was just going through all my old stuff and. Like, I have every Game Boy except the Brick.
You have it? Oh, wow.
I think, no, it's the Brick and the DS Fat. I don't have the DS Fat, but I have every other version of the DS and the Game Boy and everything. Oh, and the Micro. I don't have the Micro, but...
Yeah. The interesting thing, though, is because of what Nintendo was to a generation, I never had to own the other products because all my friends owned them. Like, yeah, I have 100+ hours in GoldenEye because... all my friends had GoldenEye. So, yeah, I would go over there and play the game. I beat the game on several friends on their N64s.
Makes sense. That's how I played all my PlayStation stuff, because I never had an original PlayStation growing up.
I had a PlayStation. I had a PlayStation 1. After it was, for me, console-wise, it was NES, Sega, and then PlayStation. And then after that, it was Xbox and PlayStation 2, and... Now it's like 360. Now it's pretty much just give me anything and I'll play. My phone and my old iPod. I play a lot on that.
Yeah, I mean, games. We want to play games everywhere, so everything runs games.
Everything runs games. I will call my mom and my sister a gamer because they constantly play Words with Friends. So
Absolutely.
And,
You know, they used to call that just casual gaming. Now it's just
I-
their default gaming.
I don't call it casual gaming because they say the same kind of insults to each other that I've heard on Xbox Live. It's not as vile, but every now and then the house is quiet. I'm in my room, and then I hear my mom yell down the hall, "You little shit!" And then like a second later, my sister laughed. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't get that intense or game or play a game every day and
Yeah.
call yourself a casual
Yeah.
gamer. All right, so you know, you grew up around games, playing games. Very typical story for
Yeah.
most people in America now. When did you really make that shift from these are something that I could make in the future to I am making games?
I think I was watching Tech TV, and I think they were at a school that was doing that. They had a program for that, and my mom, she's like, "Hey, you should think about that," and it just kind of never left. And even through high school, as much as fun as that was, I always had in the back of my mind, I want to make games. Though
So like you knew like going into high school, I want to make games.
I knew coming out of middle school, going in high school, and coming out of high school, I wanted to make games. It was just I didn't know where the hell I was going to do that. And I spent 4 years at a junior college. I liked it. I learned a lot. I actually quote that at my junior college, I actually got an education as opposed to high school, where high school they just grill you and then people actually physically grill you. And then at a JC, I actually got an education. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
great place
I
to
know.
start.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I know what X is now. This is fascinating.
So, like, what aspect of making games? Like, you went to design.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know I wanted to be the designer? Did you just
I-
think designer because?
I didn't. I don't know. And to be quite honest, I still don't know what a designer fully does because no one has really defined it, and education hasn't defined it. I think a lot of schools are facing that problem when they have that degree.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people who have game design degrees, and it's really a game programming degree or a game art degree.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like I don't know if a game designer is supposed to program. I don't know if they're supposed to make art. I don't know if they're not. I know the one thing that they're not. They're not a director. Like a movie director, like Steven Spielberg or Michael Bay or whomever.
Yeah, they're not the dictator of the project.
Yeah, they're the boss, and they make people do what they want to do. A game designer is weirdly like they have to. They're almost like an ambassador to all the departments. It's weird because I can kind of speak some programmer. I can definitely speak artist. I can speak animation. I'm damned if I can do any of them though.
Yeah, exactly.
know.
I mean, it's good. You have to be able to touch each
Yeah.
aspect in order to be able to communicate to people what you want. I don't know. In that movie analogy, it might be a better comparison to say you're the storyboard artist. 'Cause you kind of block out what the game's going to be moment to moment. And in a movie that's done visually by an artist drawing out these cells on a storyboard, but in a game that's done through a game design document, talking with the artists and the programmers, playtesting the mechanics and adjusting the feel. So I think there's a comparison there, though they're mechanically very different how you actually execute it.
I do compare movies and games a lot, but I don't. But they're not so as compatible. You know, at the same time, like I have taught a number of people how to make games, especially with new students. Like it was this funny thing because like when I got into Cogswell, didn't know a damn thing about how to make a game. Took a class with Stone LeBran, and I'm like, oh, that's it.
Who is an amazing teacher.
He's an amazing guy.
If you can ever take a class with him, do so.
Yeah.
He teaches at DDC a lot, too.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And actually, with board games, I didn't really play a whole lot. I mean, I played the standard board games growing up, like Monopoly, Clue, Risk. I played the old Risk, like the wooden pieces my dad has.
Like classic.
Classic Risk. Yeah, he still has it. I played
Nice.
Classic Risk. He kicked my ass. But the thing was, I didn't have to clean up because he dominated, so it was all his pieces.
Yeah,
so
just
he had to
own
clean up.
that.
Yeah. So that's the good thing about losing a Risk. But at the same time, with Risk and Monopoly, it's just there's a point where you're just bored with it. But I grew up playing those, and I never dived into games, board games. I thought, oh, video games are cool. That's where it is for me. Getting into college, and at my orientation in 2008, I played. Was it Arkham Horror?
Oh, yeah, that's a good.
With Josh.
It's a good German style game to get into.
Yeah, and it tripped something in me because I'm like, wait, we're not playing against each other. We're fighting monsters and demons and like Cthulhu. and I'm a
all sorts of different story narratives going on.
Yeah, it was weird. And all of a sudden, I was a reporter. I randomly got the reporter character, and I'm like, what the hell? I don't want that. And the next thing I know, I made him into a tank. Like, he had a shotgun, and I had, like, a deputy with me who did my bidding, and he killed monsters. And it was a fun game. We didn't finish it.
Yeah, there's so many people who, like, when they think board games, they'll think these kid games that are designed for 12-year-olds and under. And those aren't necessarily bad. Like, 12-year-olds and under need games too.
Yeah, they do.
But there's a whole world of advanced board games out there.
I have played enough apples to apples to know that's not a kid's game.
Yeah, the apples to apples is not a kid's game. I mean, the Cards Against Humanity guys prove that. All you gotta do is change some of the words.
You just gotta, especially I think at GDC, not GDC, at PAX, they had, there was a big Cards Against Humanity booth. I think it was 2013. They had, and if you waited in line, you would get this huge box that could, hold all the expansions that they had, plus the original game. But you also got a special card, which was, I think, Big Black Dick or something like that. So, I mean, right there,
it's as offensive as possible.
It's as offensive as possible. But at the same time,
I like the apples to apples subtlety though, because it wasn't. None of the cards were offensive, but the combinations were.
If you can make fluffy offensive,
yeah, exactly.
You get points, in my opinion. So that was interesting with it. So through college, it was like board games are awesome, and then that just kind of grew, and then I realized I'm not such a great coder, and technically I was actually a modeler through the game for the.
Well, you started as a 3D modeling degree, not as a game design degree.
Yeah, and I stuck with the 3D modeling because I had certain problems with the game design degree. But
you took the game design classes.
I took the game design classes against certain people's advice or lack thereof
so
advice.
You kind of got like the game design degree.
Yeah, I kind of got the game design degree. I took level design. I took Stone's class and level design class, and I took a few other classes that revolved around it. But that was also about making the 3D world and not like coding anything. I'm not a coder. I'm not grand at that. I'm trying to learn, and I don't have the weird thing with coding is like, this isn't going to work. It's broken. This is not. Why is it working?
Yeah, everything's all magic at first. It's really hard. I mean, it's always magic. It's all being good at coding is being able to figure out how the magic works.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I'd rather draw something because then I know how a human works. Whereas, like, I have no idea what this function is supposed to mean. I can kind of read code, but it's like it's sort of like I can kind of understand German if I saw that movie with the German people speaking with subtitles. That's kind of what it is. So other than that, I'm not.
So what was the first game you made?
The first game I made, not counting the board game I made in Stone's class.
I don't know. Is that was the first game you made?
No, it wasn't. It was because the first game I made was in Game in a Month, and it was Lava Lamp, and I made that with Brody.
So Game in a Month was at our school at the Game Development Club. We would host these events like once a semester.
Yeah, once a semester.
We would have a game in a month. We would divide the club up into teams, and everyone would make a game in a month. Simple as that.
Yeah. It was pretty simple and it was pretty rudimentary. The thing about that one was, I walked into the college not having a computer. I had a crappy little PC at home that was loud. Did not have a laptop. So I was the only one when I met with my team that did not have a computer.
Yeah, that's really hard.
It was difficult, and I don't know what I'm credited on that game, like a little bit of the art here and there or something. It was weird.
That was kind of the trick of the club is that we would put the freshmen on the teams, and even if they didn't really contribute, they would like see the process from the inside. And the trick was that eventually they would keep doing projects. Maybe they'll become the president of the club. And then they start, doing that for the next set of freshmen.
It was this weird thing where it's like, I didn't know anything but games, and then I came into the vice presidency, and like it was like in the middle of like the spring semester, my next semester, where I don't really do many projects, because my first semester it was really front loaded. I was there for 6 days a week, and I had 5 classes, and I'm like, I'm not doing that again, because it was just too strenuous. So the next semester I took a little bit easier, and halfway through the semester, it was decided that Brody was going to be the 9th president, because we said, screw election, it's obvious, he's going to be the president. Okay, sure. So he's going to be number 9. And then he came to me like Yeah, it was weird. We're in the bathroom, and I was like, just drying my hands, and he washed his hands. He's like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna be president. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Hey, do you want to be vice president? What? Like I was there. This is like a semester and a half, and like yeah, sure.
No, I mean that's a great way to get
Yeah.
students, active and involved. Give them a title, give them some responsibility, and
Yeah,
people
so-
will step up and do some cool stuff.
Yeah, so I was vice president for through 09 and 10, and then I became president in May of 2010 in May, and that whole semester, the summer semester before fall began, I was scared because I kept hearing from certain people that the club was going to close, we're not doing anything, and then miraculously someone high up told me, "Why would we shut you down? You're not building a bomb, right?" It's like,
Yeah, no, there's always these rumors of like, oh, the school's gonna close the club down because like they kind of rule that school and like taking up space. And
yeah, and there was like all this other stuff where like certain teachers said, "Oh, they're not doing anything. They have that room to themselves. We should combine some."
they're all
like,
very hateful lies, that are
Yeah.
I think half-hearted attempt to motivate people.
Yeah,
Maybe not the best way to, but
it was weird. It was like coming down on this whole thing, and I think I walked into my first meeting in the fall semester in 2010. I walked into my first meeting. The room, as usual, was packed. Because if I've been to a number of first meetings at that point, they're always packed, and it was hot. It's a big room, but it's not so, it's small when like 30 to 40 people are crammed into it, And I walked into that room. It was hot as hell, and my brain just said, "Fuck it." And I just went for it, and I introduced myself, had my officers introduce themselves, and basically after all that was said and done, it was a round table of who's who, just names and what their year was. And then I said, guess what? Next week, you're all going to pitch
pitch a new game.
a new game, and we're going to vote on 3 or 4 games, and teams are going to be divided up, and we're going to make said game, and go as outlandish as you can.
Nice.
And people were like, what?
Did you have them like make digital games, paper prototypes?
It was all digital. We had 3 games, and they were all made, I think, through Game Maker. One was Java, strictly Java, and then the other 2 were Game Maker. So, and I was proud of them. I mean, that was in the September. It was like the pitching, and then dividing up into teams, and then in October it was make the games, and then by the end of October and the beginning of November, I told all the teams, okay, we're done, because I needed a break because that was really stressful.
Yeah,
And-
doing constant game of
Yeah.
the month prototyping is
Yeah.
very, very stressful.
But the other thing, I was acting like executive or head producer, and the thing was, I thought people were going to come to me with these really complex problems, like, I don't know how, like, do you know C#? No, I don't know C#. Do you know how to do this really advanced trick? No, I don't. That's what I thought people were going to come to. No, most of the arguments I dealt with were like, I don't like him. Come, really?
Yeah,
I don't give a shit.
all tiny, easy to handle stuff.
And all of it was
But I mean, that's like
questions.
people management in general, right? Like
Yeah.
those little things. If you can fix those things,
Yeah.
projects will run smoothly.
Yeah, and I like to think I did fix the few things. One thing I did fix was a certain person that was berating the club a lot. And that came after all those games were done, and he didn't like that. He didn't like the games because they weren't impressive in his
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
About naming names.
Well,
of
yeah,
the
not-
show,
not naming
but
names.
It goes down to critique, teaching
Yeah.
people how to critique well.
There's a teacher at the school who's an art teacher. I love him. I will say his name is Jeff, and he's fantastic. I love Jeff, and Dave too. The thing is, Jeff will tell what your thing is a piece of shit, and then he'll show you why, and all of a sudden it won't be a piece of shit, and it'll look cool.
Yeah, it's okay to tell the student that their work is terrible
Yeah.
if you tell them exactly why and
Right.
possibly how they can fix it.
This person just called him a piece of shit and didn't give reason why.
Yeah, and I'm like, they're students, right? The first thing they're going to make is always terrible. That's the whole
yeah,
point.
It was the point. That's the thing.
Like, they're not graduate students, they're undergrads.
There's a couple of things. When I realized I was teaching more freshmen how to make games, I always asked them the first question, what does every game have in common? And a few of them would raise their hands. I would get points, and I would basically answer, okay, well, there's XP points, there's health points, there's scoring points. There's a lot of points. What points are you talking about? And
Yeah,
they
and there's also all
and
sorts
there's a
games
lot
with
of games
no
that don't
points at
have
all.
points.
Yeah.
You know, like
a
Fiasco.
very limited
Fiasco doesn't technically have points.
Yeah, exactly.
It has numbers, but they aren't technically points. So it's like, you know, there's that. All right, okay, and then I will also get story. I'm like, all right, what's the story to poker or Jenga?
Hmm.
You know, the point to Jenga is balance. You know, it's not. It's to be the Jenga is one of the few games I can think of that can have 3 winners and 1 loser. Really, or more.
Yeah.
It's a multiple winners and 1 loser. That's how Jenga
Yeah,
works.
because you don't win Jenga. You just don't lose Jenga.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's interesting to think of it that way. And they'll just kind of look at me like, well, I thought games were story. Like, no, poker's not a story.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I
win
mean, you
the
can have
pot.
stories in the metagame of poker.
Yeah, I mean, I've played poker, and most of the time you play poker, it's a conversation, and then you're bidding, you know, pennies or, you know, not at all money. So that's how it works. So, and sometimes if you're playing Texas Hold'em, for whatever reason, people think they're on TV and they don't want to talk. Can we talk?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
when you're a casual game and you're playing
yeah.
your TV, well, you know.
You know, we're not making $250,000, all right? Like,
Yeah,
we're not
you're
making
betting,
anything.
You're betting $5 at a pizza.
Yeah, right. So like that was the whole thing, and it kind of dawns on them that, you know, that's what games are. Games aren't not. I mean, games can tell a story in a really interesting way, but that's not their basis. That's not the point.
So the answer to that question is a goal.
Yeah, the answer to the question is a goal. How do you win? And that's my whole confusion.
It's not even necessarily win, right? It's like what do you do in a game? And so
Yeah.
that, you know, people say like, oh, is Minecraft a game because there's no goal? But like, there's lots of goals. There's just not one main focused goal.
Yeah,
There's a
and-
goal to survive, a goal to
Well,
build something cool.
it's the same thing with Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, World of Warcraft, I think World of Warcraft and say D&D are very similar in their goal. You know, we all have quests and stuff like that, but I think D&D's goal isn't to do X quest. It's to tell a story later. Or 10 years from now. Oh, yeah, I remember when we did this thing. Like, I remember the first time I fought a boss fight, and I fought with 5 of my friends and my DM Rob, who was brilliant, and 3 of us were down, and the only 2 people up, one had 2 hit points left, the other one could easily be one-shotted. And she crit and won the game, and it was an explosion of excitement. That happened 5 years ago almost.
Oh yeah, and we tried the story for the rest of your life.
That's the goal of D&D, and there are stories of her that of people battling. And, you know, that's how. What's the whole thing with WoW? Dots. We need more dots.
Oh yeah,
I mean
the
that's
Omnixia, that raid immortalized.
Yeah. That's it's basically your goal is to actually tell the story of this one time that happened. You know, that's the goal with D&D.
Yeah, it's a bunch of, you know, mini goals strung together of like, oh, you want it to stay alive, you want your characters to get this item, go that, this quest, that quest. And it isn't just that, oh, I reached this goal, end of game, or I reached this, I win. But it's that goal stream can be endless. And that's also where some sandbox games, bad ones, fail, is that the short-term goals are not fun in themselves. Like the fun is, you know, not the destination, it's the journey.
Yeah. That's the thing about some games. Like, I'm playing Far Cry 3. I've been backlogging a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I got, like, Assassin's Creed, the Ezio trilogy, so I'm playing through that, but I'm like, it's okay. The problem that most open world games have is all the side quests don't correlate to the main one, I think. Grand Theft Auto, they can get away with that because it is a living, breathing world a little bit, and you can do stuff and nothing's that time critical. But in Far Cry, I think it does it really well because every little side quest helps, beat the bad guys. I'm taking out outposts. I'm, building up these, radio towers to help, the people of this island to make them, free. And that's what I think is good. It really sucks when it's like, it's the end of the world and we have to save. And oh, hey, go get 50 chickens for me. What? No.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what the biggest problem with Majora's Mask was.
Yeah. I never played that.
Because it was the one where every 3 days the world ended and you would start back at the beginning. And you had to get all your abilities, so you'd have to play through the end of the world. I don't know how many times, right?
Right.
Many, many, many times. And you would, individually save everybody's life and help them out and get them their 50 chickens and make somebody fall in love and find this person's missing cat, whatever the themes were.
Yeah.
And then once you did that and you got all your abilities, you could then defeat the final boss and save the world. But it was so disheartening because in the last real timeline, you just did that. Everyone else's life was miserable. That guy's missing his chickens. They never fell in love. They didn't find his cat. And you just feel like sad afterwards. It's like, Groundhog Day, that movie.
Yeah.
Where the last day, it was like the perfect day. And that's the one that he continues on. Like, it's just like, oh, some random day. Oh, you just get to continue now arbitrarily. Or at least that's what, like, I'm sorry to just rant about it. I took that and reflected back my steamed up hate for that game.
That's the problem with most open world games. I mean, there are brilliant open world games, but the problem is it's like you have this awesome narrative that is very linear, and people think that open world game isn't linear. No, they are, because they do have missions and quests that are very linear. And if you take the best linear game of all time, which is Half-Life 2, which is very linear.
Subjective point, but I agree. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. It feels very open, and it's actually one of the few games in that time that actually made me feel like I was really in a war. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I was a hero in the war, but I was still technically human. Whereas, like, if you're Halo and you're Master Chief, you're
kind of above.
You're above everyone. You're literally above.
You're kind of above everyone else in Half-Life 2. Mm-hmm. You're more powerful, but I think Half-Life 2 in particular did really well. Like those scenes with what's her name? Alex. That where she has the gun and you have the gravity gun.
Yeah,
like those are some of the best moments in gaming because it takes away your power. Mm-hmm. It's an escort mission and you're the one being escorted.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah, so. I mean, there's few games that have been able to accomplish that. And the game's how many years old at this point?
It's like 11, around 11 or something.
No way. It
came out in 2004, yeah.
No way. It totally is. That's crazy.
Came out in 2004. I was 18 when that came out.
Wow.
And that's also around when Valve was trying their whole Steam thing.
I mean, they've done the episodes. But
they've done the episodes. Those came out a little later.
Episode 1, Episode 2 were amazing. Yeah. And Half-Life 3 will happen someday.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're working on it. They know. They know.
I think they know.
So, like, getting back to, like, game design, not just games. Mm-hmm. You're managing these teams. You're running this club. You've sure been on teams, seen teams that have one designer, many designers. What do you think works better when there is kind of one person with the vision and there's maybe sub-designers under that person, or do you think people working together? Because like in big AAA and big studios, you have teams. These projects are big enough. Far Cry 3, Half-Life, these aren't made by a single person. Yeah. But when you start scaling it back, you're talking more indie size and the smaller teams.
Yeah, with indie teams, you definitely have to wear many hats. But the thing that I think when people are starting to learn, you have to realize that you have to wear many hats. And the one thing that people definitely have to learn is that your game, like you have this idea for this game, and your buddies want to help you make it. You have to let them think about the game too, and help them have them design it just as much as you are, because it will change, no matter what.
The key is communication.
Yeah, the key is communication, and also the key is, like, if they think of something that's really cool, but you don't like it because it might clash with the thought that you have for the game, then you're not going to get the game made, I think.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the problem with this. With big studios, I don't think you have that problem because everyone's kind of working on one thing at a time. But with, like, a small team, anywhere between 2 to 10 people, I don't know what a small team, 20 people, you have to wear many hats. And that's where I think everyone's kind of has a hand in designing it. So with that, you basically have to think of, that your game, you have this game for a shooter, it's going to do this, and the gun's going to change like this way. But you have to also think that the game is, going to be very different as you progress it, because games change constantly through their design. It's not going to be like the game you thought of that you wrote out is not going to be the thing that you shipped. It's never going to be. And I've learned that with my board games. Like, the game I thought out is not the game that I'm currently making right now. It is not, and it's changed drastically through.
Well, let's talk about the game, because you're currently making a board game.
Trying to, yes.
Yes, let's talk about it.
It's called The Hunt, possibly a working title. I could stick with it. I've been going back and forth with it for a couple of years. Just like, because I get distracted with one thing with work or whatever.
So it's always been like your side project.
Yeah, a
go
little
back
side
to
project. And right now it's just kind of like gung-ho. I need to work on it. And basically it's The Hunt, and it's like 4 tribesmen, and all the tribesmen are from like the north, the south, the east, the west.
Mm-hmm.
All of them have different weapons. Atlatl, a boomerang, which is basically a big, heavy throwing stick, tomahawks, and then forgot it. It's basically they tie the animal up. It's a bola. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
I think I know what you're talking about.
It's basically they fling it, and it's got 2 weighted things, and when it wraps around,
I've seen that.
I think it's called a bola. I could be horribly wrong. So that's the difference between all of it, and basically it's a point. Like you go into there's 4 zones. You walk.
So is it like D&D grid based?
Yeah, it's a grid based, like inch squares, and that's the movement, and it's figuring out because all of them have a certain characteristic. Like the northern tribesman who has the atlatl, which is a spear thrower device. If you don't know about what cavemen used, he has range, and in the beginning of the designing that, he could clear the whole board. So it's like it's a bit unfair. So it's like figuring out his range. It's also figuring out the power with the Eastern tribesman who has the big throwing stick club. Figuring out the speed. His whole thing is power. It's a balancing act.
Step back a bit. Like, are you fighting 2 tribes?
No.
Together,
Sorry. It's 4 tribes, and they're basically hunting in this sacred hunting grounds, and it's a competition between the 4 of them
to get the most food.
To get the most food, ergo points. Mm-hmm. But the thing about it is, it's basically the way I'm calling it competitive cooperative. Because as you're killing animals, blood is in the air, and that draws it as I'm making like a little blood scent bar, and as that gets higher and higher, it'll call in a big game hunter, who will then attack all of the tribesmen, and that's when they all have to work together, kind of.
Because if you don't, so you could leave the other tribesmen to die, but then you'll probably die too.
You could easily die too, but the other thing is like that big game hunter is also worth a big amount of points. So let's say you're in 2nd place.
Can you like share that kill, or like is it the last person to get?
It's if you get the kill, that's one thing, but you have to claim it. That's how.
So
it
you
works.
have to work together to kill it, and then fight each other over.
It's basically if you're right next to it when it dies, and it's your turn, you can move over to it and go claimed, and then the game ends, and then you get the. I don't know how many points it will be, 10 points or 50 points, whatever.
That goes back into the figuring out the balance.
That goes back to figuring out the balance and trying to figure out how animals are found and all that kind of stuff. So it's been tricky because I've been like, I thought I can make it with hexagons. Hexagons are really cool, and then I didn't change my overall design, which is a beginner mistake, but everyone kind of makes that kind of mistake. So I'm like, you know what? Forget the hexagons. We're going back to a grid because that's easier to move. So. Yeah, you just kind of have to. You're constantly tearing the game apart and rebuilding it. And if you're not doing that,
trying out new stuff, seeing
what
trying
works. The one thing I will instill to every designer out there, whether they've been doing it for 20 years or they're just starting out, is you gotta fail.
Yeah, fail often.
It's not a horrible thing, and I've seen this too many times where people think it's a bad thing. It's not. Mm-hmm. Schools have instilled that it is a bad thing. Failure is a bad thing. And there's a whole failure is not an option. If you don't fail, then you are not really learning it.
Yeah, no, failure is always an option. I love that. That's Adam Savage's saying from Mythbusters. Failure is always an option. Like, you should fail. You should try things that fail. Well,
failures or accidents, have created some of the best things. I think I heard. I don't know. The legend says that Reese's cups, peanut butter cups, were a failure. Mm-hmm. A lot of things were a failure.
A lot of the coolest games come out with weird experimental prototypes that don't actually end up being what they originally intended to be.
Yeah, well, the other thing is like glitches in games offer a lot of. You could call it a failure, but I've seen videos of people playing games with glitches and then they're laughing and having a great time. And if your game's making people laugh and they're having a great time with it, then I think you won.
Yeah, exactly. That's not even failure in the first. But even the game fails completely where it doesn't even come out.
Yeah,
you still learn from it. You still gain some. You bettered yourself as a designer by creating it, even if it ended up being finished. Mm-hmm. You should finish your games.
Yeah, you definitely need to finish your game.
If you don't finish your game, don't feel like it was all not worth anything.
Yeah, it's hard to get that to people, especially new designers who just stepped in that are like 18 years old.
We touched on that before. Like, what would you say is the number one advice you would give? Let's talk about yourself. You're 2008. You're starting a club.
I was like
Get in a
22.
time machine. You get back in there. You got 30 seconds. What advice do you give yourself?
I would tell myself try to learn code and don't goof off as much.
Really, try to learn code. Like, you're just talking about like, oh, code is hard, this and that. But
I would try to learn code. I don't know if I would take a class at Cogswell. It would depend on the teacher. But I would definitely say learn code. Like, get someone to teach you on their own to learn code. Know it, because if I did know code, I'd probably be in a better position at the moment. But it's one of those things. I know art pretty well. I'm not a fantastic artist, but I know it. I know anatomy.
You really grok it.
What?
Grok, sci-fi word. You really understand it.
I really understand it. Correct. So it's a thing where I don't understand the other half of the whole equation, because game designers aren't a master at one thing. They're a jack of all trades. You can be a master at design, and designing, I feel like, is like editing in movies. Or if you're a good editor, you won't see their work. A good designer, you won't see their work.
Good way to think about it.
Yeah. So. And I think coding would help that as well. And you in coding and stuff like that, you have to know how to troubleshoot. Why is this level not working? What's going on? This trigger should be doing this or whatever. So I would definitely tell myself to learn code and try not to goof off as much. And also I would tell my younger self to just accept the changes that will happen, because the best thing that in college on a personal level is that I changed drastically. 7 years ago, I was not the best person, and it's changed drastically.
You always regret who you were, right?
Yeah, you're
always bettering yourself.
Yeah, you're always bettering yourself, but like I was very against the change that was happening back then. But I would definitely say accept it, because everyone has to go through years of hell, and everyone has to go through years of greatness. I mean, it's basically like failure. You fail, you win, you do both. And I don't think people are permanently like, what's that meme? Bad Luck Brian?
Yeah.
I don't think people are permanently that. You will have moments where you're
everyone will always be Bad Luck Brian.
Yeah.
And people who are good guy Greg will have more good times to speak in memes.
Yeah, to speak in memes.
Which is the best way to give advice.
Yeah, because I'm on Reddit way too... Yeah. Because I'm on Reddit way too damn much.
Yeah. All right, so... let's talk about playing games. We already were talking about a bunch, but what games specifically you've been playing lately? You talked about playing through Assassin's Creed and going stuff. What else have you been playing?
Well, Assassin's Creed and Far Cry 3, though, I haven't been back, to play them for a while. But currently I've been playing Mercenary Kings, which is an old pixelated. It's like Metal Slug. Old school Metal Slug, which is one of my favorite games to play.
Nice arcade shooter.
Oh yeah, it was a great game. That was a game I went to when I was going to Nickel City or Tilt, the old arcades. It was Metal Slug, and Mercenary Kings is like that, except it's got more nuance to it. Like there's not a level up system, but there's a crafting system. You make guns and blades and all this other stuff. So it was really cool. I'm definitely looking forward to playing that. And I played Spelunky not too long ago, which is a fun game. It's a game where I feel it has this thing where it's like it's really hard, it's really difficult, but I can kind of get lost with it and just play it.
Yeah, it's got a good amount of replayability.
Yeah, it's got infinite replayability in my opinion. So it's these old school classic games that I like, and I like the fact that I feel like they're making a resurgence, and it's only because the indie scene is growing so.
Because indies can do the kind of games that they want. These little small projects that they won't sell too well if they were $60 and packaged on a shelf, but they're $5 and a digital download. Actually, are pretty profitable.
Yeah, they're awesome, and I think Spelunky originally was made with Game Maker.
Yes, I think that's true.
Yeah, so never
asterisk for not sure, but
I think it was originally. I want to say it was because I heard someone talking about saying that they've been playing Spelunky for like 5 years and on the original Game Maker thing. So, yeah, do not knock Game Maker.
Yeah, that's a whole other point. Game Maker is a good tool.
Yeah, if you are just starting out, do Game Maker. Go through what isn't it Yo-Yo Games?
Yo-Yo Games.
Go to their website. They have free PDFs. Read all their tutorials. I think there's a good 5 of them.
And they redid their engine like a few years ago. Game Maker Studio is like a lot faster than it was too. So really
so
nice.
read those tutorials, get Game Maker there, and you can definitely do some really cool things, and that's just a stepping stone. Think of it like leveling up. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're level 1 a game maker, and then you can progress, and then you can like dive into harder
Makes sense.
stuff.
Makes sense. So what I've been playing lately is Sunset Overdrive.
Ooh.
It's because I got a 1 and I checked it
Yeah.
out, and I was really, really, really excited for this game. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be
Why were
it." I don't know. Like I saw the videos and I was imagining Jet Grind Radio because I saw all the grinding and that fun. I'm like, that's got to be great. And it's good. Like I would not describe it as bad.
Right.
It didn't meet all my expectations though. I think mostly because the humor tries a little too hard.
I don't know what your opinions on reviews are. I take game reviews seriously because, again, we're saying some games are $60. I gotta know where my money's going. And I saw a review, and the reviewers liked it, but the problem they had with it was the main character. They were an asshole.
It's main character, like it's supposed to be you, is so unlikable.
Yeah, that's a
He's
big
such
problem.
a jerk, and then like everyone around him is a jerk, and it's like they're trying to be funny and they're trying to be meta.
Yeah.
And if they like literally they just toned it back. Like you said, all right, these are all the jokes. Let's only do half of these jokes and just continue the game otherwise, it would have been a much better game.
Right.
It felt like it was trying to be funny too much. But the gameplay from like a functional standpoint of like running around, shooting and grinding is fun. But it just got like they're really annoying with this like half-hearted story. Like a really good example would be I should have thought, what's it called? Armed and Dangerous. What was that one? It had I want to say it was either Australian or British, but it was a really, really funny game. It was like from a mechanical point of view, bland, everyday shooter, same old. But I would replay that game in a heartbeat because it was hilarious. It had me in stitches constantly, and it was trying to make me laugh constantly, but it worked. So I guess in Sunset Overdrive, I don't mind it was trying to constantly. It just didn't work as much as I would hope it would.
I like the fact that Sunset Overdrive kind of came out, and I liked the first trailer I saw for it because I'm really getting tired of the games that have come out, which is like it's basically this white grizzled guy with this gravel voice going, "War is hell."
Yeah, exactly.
I don't give a shit. I know war is a bad thing.
That's actually another point of Sunset because it has a decent intro at the beginning where you're like running around, and then it's like, let's give you all this story and let's have you go on this fetch quest. Yeah. And then now that you've done this intro thing that's cool, let's have you play for like an hour and a half to like set up this world and your base, and I'll show you every aspect of the game and force you to do every different mini game.
Oh,
and
that's bad.
It was like, wait, you had it. Just give me the open world. You don't need to handhold me. Let me discover it.
Yeah, it's better when like they just give you the key to the city and let you run around and do whatever. I mean, Saints Row was perfect as that. Like, yeah, you do the first mission, but then like, oh yeah, I'm doing this first mission. Yeah, this first mission. Okay, that's cool. It's insane, whatever. And then you're left on your own, and then you pretty much can do whatever the hell you want. It's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get a tank,
and the game would work really well like that. I mean, it gets to that later on, and as I said, like mechanically, it's actually pretty decent and it's fun. But it's just like the motivation of like, well, why am I going to help out this guy doing this thing when that guy is terrible, and I hate having to listen to his voice because he's so terrible.
Yeah. That's man. I am hoping Sunset Overdrive sparks a trend with games going back to fun. Like I think there's room for the games that are really dramatic and really serious, like Last of Us.
Yeah, I appreciate that it is unquestionably silly and fun and not serious and doesn't take itself seriously.
That was a problem. A lot of games in the last generation were overly serious, and it's like, and and there's this whole question of like, what's fun? Like Last of Us. Technically, you wouldn't define that game as a fun game because it rips your heart out.
It's sad.
It's very sad, but it's like it's that thing where it's like you kind of have to play it, a little bit. I feel like because it's the acting in it is
explores
fantastic.
Different emotions.
Yeah, so that's fine. But I want games to get back to that like stupid, zany things. I don't think games could do
if
comedy.
I was like 10 years younger, like Sunset Overdrive might be like my favorite game.
Right.
Like if I was into less mature humor. If I hadn't seen a game this zany before,
Yeah.
and I grew up with this Gears of War era where it's all
Serious.
grindy.
Yeah.
Like even Gears of War is old in itself,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean by that, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
everything
yeah.
kind of started copying that copy paste Brown formula. Like I think this
Yeah,
would be it would have more of an impact than it did.
Yeah.
And like I still play it. Like it's not bad enough where I'm like, oh, this game's bad, I'll quit. Like no, I'll play it. It's good.
Yeah.
It just I'm not going to say that it's like the best game of all time.
Yeah, I wouldn't call. I didn't think it was going to be a fantastic game, but I'm hoping that it definitely starts a trend with games going back to the zany, colorful, fun world, and then we'll get games like Last of Us with good narration, things like that.
Have a little bit of everything.
Yeah, we need to have a little bit of everything. Movies have a little bit of everything. It's like I want to watch an indie comedy. I want to watch a big action flick. Yes,
Absolutely.
I do watch Transformers.
Absolutely.
I want to watch something stupid at the same time serious. So.
All right, so if you want to find more about the show, you can go to beindienow.com. You get past episodes, show notes, cool stuff like that. If you want to find more about me, you can go to my blog, tobiahmarks.com, where I have all sorts of information you might find useful in game development. Or follow me on Twitter at tobiahmarks. Where can we find more about you, Nick?
I'm on Twitter at oso_Lindberg.
Oso as in bear.
Yeah, oso as in bear.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's glad to do this finally.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So,
it was a lot of fun.
for everyone out there, go out and make some games.
Do it.